All right, it's 1 after, so we'll get started here. So good afternoon, everyone. I am Sarah Rivers. I am the Senior Director of Connected Commerce here at IGA. So we've been on a roll with these webinar series lately, and we'll be continuing this week with a series of 4 quick mini webinars over the next 4 Tuesdays. They'll be about 20 minutes each. We wanted to keep them quick and concise so you could get in, learn something, and get out and get back to your jobs. So we'll be talking about how to execute a successful digital advertising strategy. So everything from analyzing your shopper demographics, assessing your competitors, defining the ideal shopper journey, and then of course measuring results. So we hope you'll join us for all 4. In today's episode, we'll be talking about understanding your current shopper and your market landscape and what you should be looking at to make more informed and confident decisions based on today's shopper realities. So I am joined today by our partners at Flipp, Aaron Lawrence, Director of Partner Development, and Logan Salzberg, Growth and Partnerships Leader. Flipp is the #1 digital circular platform globally with over 15 years in the market. They work with over 1,600 retailers representing 300,000 plus rooftops. So that's pretty impressive. So Aaron, I'll let you get started with our webinar today.
Thank you very much, Sarah, and pleasure to be speaking with everyone today. Really the focus for today's first series is to walk you through a little bit more about the conversations that we've been having with a number of retailers. As Sarah mentioned, with over 300,000 rooftops, one of the best things that we are able to offer with Flipp is understanding the reality that retailers are going through in different stages all across the country and take those learnings to help provide some of the decisions that your teams will be making. So again, with Flipp, we've been working for the last 17 years, really helping retailers to say, okay, when some of my customers are starting to find my message in different ways or plan in different options, how do I ensure that I consistently know where they are and I can tell my best story in the ways that I used to in the channels that they used to look at. So as we work through that transition, we're going to walk through all the different steps, and today's focus is really going to be on just better understanding what the reality of the shopper is going through, so we can be confident in decisions on what it looks like next. So just hopping right into the presentation, I think it's not a huge surprise, but shoppers are really feeling a lot of the changes that many of us have been exposed to over this year. There's always been changes that are going on, but just the uncertainty of knowing how much things are going to cost, or will they be available, or how quickly prices are rising for a number of different reasons, have really made the shopper stop and say, okay, even though I used to make these choices before, am I still going to be able to continue to buy the same categories or buy the same brands that I used to? And if I'm not able to do so, how do I ensure that I have the research and the information to make the best decisions for myself and my household? So because of the uncertainty, the good news is that a lot of these shoppers aren't just kind of throwing their hands in the air. It's really saying, I need to find a place that has the information to make the best decisions for the decisions I need to make. And across North America, every retailer is really seeing that, like, immediately when we think transition and digital and value, it just means dropping prices, but that's not really what we're seeing. I think when you take a look at even the leadership teams of a lot of independent and regional grocers, what they're saying is the value means a lot of different things to a lot of different shoppers. And it's important that we take the time to understand what it means to the shoppers within our trade areas. For some, it's about having healthy foods that are available, and that's the #1 thing that drives those decisions. For others, it is about having just their key value items or their staples they're willing to pay for, but they might make some concessions in some of the more discretionary brands or items within their household. And for others, it's about, again, just feeling empowered of getting all the information available. So even if it's not the lowest price, they just feel like I'm doing the best with what's available to me based on the information that the retailers around me are giving. So I think it's really important when we're talking about the transition between print to digital, or even just reaching more shoppers in the way that they're looking at it, really focus on what value means for those shoppers and drive that forward. So we're going to go into our first quiz. Obviously, you don't want to just have me talk for 20 minutes straight. But for our first poll, the question is, who do you think your customer is? And there's a number of different options there, but if you can quickly click on one right now in terms of who your most active or most important shopper is, we can take a look at the results. Well, the good news is, even if we can't see the results right now, is that like there's going to be differences across the different people in the response. But the main thing is to understand that no matter who you think your shopper is, there is no singular experience. Because a lot of people in our conversations will say things like, well, my shopper is older, so I don't really think that reaching younger shoppers right now is the priority for me. Or they might say, hey, I don't want to reach younger shoppers because they don't have as much money as the younger shopper. But what we've seen is when you look at it across different regions or different areas, there's no universal truth in terms of like my shopper is one person. And when we talk to a lot of customers, your shopper now, most likely, even the most important shopper to you right now, is not going to be the most important shopper in 5 and 10 years. So even if you're thinking about this in a short-term or a long-term perspective, the real focus is going to be, how do I ensure that the person that I'm telling the most stories to today, I can continue for the way that they want to shop the next 5 to 10 years. But if that shopper is changing, how do I understand what that person is doing today so I can start to build that relationship over time? So as we go through it, another example we want to look at is that even if you are focusing, for people that may have thought that baby boomer was the answer for them, what we're starting to see is, one, when people are making that transition, the number one consumer they are worried about leaving behind is the person that's being most loyal, who's typically older. And one of the things that they are saying there is that like they all shop the same, but when we actually work with some of the stuff we'll talk about in the next couple of slides, what we're seeing is that an older shopper can look extremely different depending on where they are. So again, looking at zip codes that are actually not that far apart, you're looking at people who may look the same. Yes, those are AI generated, so couldn't find pictures that would make sense for the presentation. But even though they're very close in terms of region, age, and for all distinguishable factors, when you start to break down where they are, one makes significantly more than the other. One's also in a more of a suburban town versus a rural rural place, which means that actually, even though a lot of the distinguishing factors that you might not be able to tell the difference if they both walk through your store at the same time, you might want to tell them completely different stories based off of the competition that's around them, the dollars they have to spend, or even just the way that it might take them longer to get to your destination versus others based on the competition around. So it's really important to understand, what does your customer actually look like, and not just stay too high level at the remarks of saying it's an older customer or it's a younger customer. It's really about, in my regions, what does each customer look like, and what's the best story for where they are. So based off of that, we're going to go into the next question, which is, where do you think that your customers are planning? So again, typically what we do see is it might be mostly print, mostly digital, mix of both, or somewhere in between. We'll give you a couple seconds to put your answers in, and then we can move on with the presentation. So what we're seeing right now is that there's about 67% in Gen X, 33% in Gen Z, and so there's a mix across the board. But then if we can just share the ones for the next poll, we can close that off and share the results after. We can go over them. But basically, what we're seeing here is that at Flipp, what we do is an annual readership study, and if anyone would like to take a look at it, we actually take a nationally representative survey across every single region in the US, along with taking different cuts of data based off of where people live, the age group they're in, and even just the ability to have print based off of where print may be declining due to a number of different Number of different reasons. There's actually a study that we also work with that just came out this week that goes over the state of local newspaper and showcases the trends that are happening. So if there's ever research you'd like to do, just let our team know, and we're more than happy to share it with you, and we'll share it with the IGA team so that they can also pass along should there be interest. But what you're basically seeing here is that the vast majority of people, so whether it's 2/3 to 3 out of 4 people, are looking primarily in digital. And when you look at all the different types of age groups and generations, there is a high digital readership the younger you go, but even at the baby boomer level, over 50% of people are still starting their journey in digital. And no matter what income you are starting to take a look at, they all are looking at digital. I think if you've seen some recent insights, even the fastest growing group of shoppers for retail, and specifically, we don't want to talk about them, but Walmart is targeting over 150,000 per year salary owner, people that typically didn't shop at the store, but they're starting to plan more. So what we're basically saying is no matter what your income level is, because of all the changes that have happened, every single person across every income level is still starting to plan more, and specifically that's still what the circular and the digital brought. So if you can understand no matter where they live, no matter what age group they are, or how much money they make, there is a more increase in planning. The question is, how do we make sure that you're constantly a part of that consideration set when they set down the time to do so? Because at the end of the day, I know I've talked a lot about this print to digital transition, but the customer doesn't care about print or digital. I think the only people that really care are marketers and people that are in charge of getting the message out. What a shopper wants is just make it easy for me to find. I don't have to look very hard to be able to understand what you're offering that week. Make sure that it's all in one place because they don't have to go to 10 or 20 different websites to understand what that looks like. And they want to make sure that it's relevant for what's important to them. So it's the same things that you want in most of the ways that you would plan for anything. You don't want to work too hard for it. You want to make sure it's complete, and you want to make sure it's actually relevant towards you. And that's the main goal that we have. And we believe the best way to do that is by better understanding your shoppers and where they are. So at the end of the day, it's anyone that's ever been involved in marketing knows it. If they can't see you, they're not considering you. So understanding where they are, and that's why we ask the first couple questions of what does your customer look like? What customers do you care about? Where are they? How do we know that for sure? So we can have confidence to make sure they're always a part of the consideration set. Because one of the most interesting things we're saying is it's not just about what we were talking about before in terms of saying, hey, realities have changed financially, so more people are researching. It actually shows up when we've surveyed them to say, like, how many more stores are you considering on a weekly basis than you used to? And it's up almost 50%. Going back to last year, people would normally look at around 4 stores and go into 2 on a weekly basis. Now they're looking up to as much as almost 7. So what that means is that they're considering going to different places that they didn't used to just to find the value that they find was missing and before that, or because there's been so much change, they're forced to start looking at different options. So the main thing is now, 1, make sure you're a part of the 7 that they're considering. And then 2, how do we tell the best stories to drive the influence and conversion to make sure you're part of the 2 where they actually end up going on a weekly basis? Because even when we take a look at winning the trips, we do know that basket size has been challenging. I think when we go to different customers, they're saying even with the same amount of trips, baskets are smaller than they used to be, and that's because shoppers might be going to different places and not trying to do the all-in-one shop to try and get value in different areas. And even when it comes to impulse, there's a study done with Cornell looking at over 2 million store trips over a course across the retailer groups, and especially in delivery. And what they saw is even if you go to e-commerce and you try and like tell the whole story, because that's all the SKUs that you have, because you're not telling that full story, sometimes it's challenging to get that impulse purchase and that discovery. So when you're telling that story, you need to tell it's complete. I know there's some things that sometimes we're forced to say we might need to cut down pages, or we might need to make the ad go out on a lower frequency. But again, the consideration is so important. We need to tell as complete a story as we can whenever we're making that interaction with our shoppers. So the next poll question, we can fire that up now, but it's how do you look at different shoppers? And you might say that all the shoppers are the same. You might say younger shoppers, older shoppers, shoppers with more money might be more important to you. If we can quickly go through that poll, we can kind of just get an understanding of how the audience takes a look at the different shopper groups that exist. So I'll give it a couple seconds, and then we can kind of go to the last part of the presentation. Yeah. So heading into it, the way that we typically have seen that things work across the platform is on your site, that's the most loyal shopper that you're going to have. They start their journey with you, and they typically are going only to you to plan their shopping trips. The only challenge with that is that's typically less scale than people that are looking to a place that has all the offers that are available and expect the retailer to tell that story to be able to make the best decisions for themselves. And so when you're looking at shoppers that know you very well and are loyal shoppers, or looking for acquisition of new shoppers, you need to think about the environment and where you're telling the story, because that you might need to either tell different stories to the shoppers that are being exposed to your content. And then even outside of that, there might be people that don't actively go to your site, don't actively go to a place where to shop ads, but they are used to seeing content in the traditional places they used to be. So like whether that's print, and now maybe the local publisher in your area no longer distributes but has an online property that they're driving people towards. What we have seen, especially in grocery, because everyone needs to eat, if you tell a strong and engaging, complete story like you do in your ads in print, but when they're transferred into digital, people will stop and take the time to engage with it and actively plan in the areas that they used to, whether that's local newspapers, lifestyle or recipe websites. As long as it's relevant to them, so has that local product price and has that complete story, you will see strong engagement across the different platforms. So the main thing we have to say is there's a lot of different places you can reach shoppers. If you're looking for loyalty, stick to the properties that you own. But again, you're going to be limited by size. When you want to acquire and reach new shoppers or reach people that have transitioned to more of that choice and research section in off-site, just think about how you're reaching them and the stories that's involved there. So what we typically do, and one of the exciting parts of the partnership and why I'm even talking to you with Sarah and the team today, is the fact that both of our teams are really focused on providing you with as much information as possible to help with the decisions that you're going to be making when you're trying to reach new shoppers, whether it's a transition from your print strategy or just want to reach more shoppers digitally, or better reach shoppers that have already made that transition. What Flipp allows you to do there is now get a real understanding of the demographics in terms of how much is the average income in a zip code versus another, versus the age, versus the family size, to actually say, instead of thinking about it on intuition or what people may have said around the office before, get a direct look at exactly what each zip code looks like, so you can understand what's the best way to tell that story. And the step one is looking at demographics. That's step one also with an IGA and multiple step process in helping retailers. So I'm actually going to pass it off to Sarah to walk through some of the ways that our teams are working together to support retailers as well.
Absolutely. So in addition to the data that Flipp can provide you, IGA through our Advay division can help provide you with some complementary data that we call business optimization. So it's a little bit broader scope than just advertising. So we really focus on those first 3 steps. So know your market, focus your advertising, and know the strength of your competition. And then once we know that, we can do the other 4 steps there. So identifying your action plan and launch and execute and know your results. So we have done this with a lot of different stores, and it's been a very successful way for them to approach their business as well as their marketing. The most important thing to know here is that we work with Flipp to provide you and your store with the best data to make actionable decisions and a plan. We don't just hand you the data, because there is so much data out there, right? You're inundated with data. We understand. We don't just hand it to you and say, good luck to you. You know, I hope it all works out. So we help you sift through all that data and find the little nuggets of information that you need to really make an informed decision and then to execute on your plan based on that data. So.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. And as Sarah mentioned, there's so many places to get data. We'll skip the last poll question and just say, like, there is no silver bullet. There's a ton of places you can get data and insights. And I'm sure if you just read the news, there's always someone telling you something about what's happening in your markets. But it is important that these are the biggest transitions in terms of what shoppers are doing, moving from print to the sources that they are digitally. And it is a very challenging decision to make with confidence. So we do say, like, always make sure you're trying to get as informed as possible with so many different sources. As Sarah mentioned, it's hard to know where to start. And because both our teams have worked with a number of different retailers across the country in navigating these exact problems, there's learnings and insights along the way we're happy to share with you, and just like organize the data. I think the hardest part isn't necessarily having it, but how do we make it very digestible for you to actually have a conversation around? And because we can bring in all the information, you know your business and your customers the best, and just mixing most of what all of our teams together can work together is where we've seen the best results. So very happy to have walked you kind of through the first step, which is, again, similar to what Sarah said, was like knowing your customers, understanding the different ways you can approach them, understanding that shoppers are researching and looking for your content more than ever before. And it's incredibly important to understand how we can tell the best story and use that information to make sure it's in front of them. We'll talk a lot more about this in the next few sessions, but wanted to leave the floor for any questions along the way. Thank you very much for your time today.
Yeah, so if there's any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. While we're waiting for those, again, the next episode is same time next week on Tuesday. We'll be talking about auditing your current marketing mix and identifying those gaps. So like I said at the beginning, we wanted to make these small little mini webinars to educate you and help you along in this journey. So we'll be talking about that next week. And if there's no questions, which I'm not seeing any at the moment, we will just stop here. And if you think of any questions, you can feel free. Yeah, Jessica said no questions. Okay, you can feel free to email any of us here at IGA or at Flipp, but hopefully you will join us next Tuesday. Thank you, everybody, for joining, and thank you, Aaron and Logan, for joining me today.
Thanks a lot, everyone. See you next week.
Bye for now. All right.